What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Thursday edition of the NHL Strategy Show, sponsored by Better Picks or Better Fantasy. I am your host, Josh Harris. I am back after my hiatus on Tuesday. Thank you to Slim Cliffy for filling in. It is not easy doing solo shows, and if you think it is, go into your bathroom, go on Twitch, and talk for 15 minutes about your favorite sport. I dare you to see how it is. But Cliffy, how you doing?
My favorite sport's actually professional wrestling. Thank you very much. No, doing well. I didn't play last night, but I did watch the Tampa-Pittsburgh game and the Edmonton-Carolina game, and I don't think there's been a worse 1-2 punch of games to watch this year. Like, Pittsburgh looked completely uninterested in playing hockey through the first 40 minutes, and then Carolina, like, that game was over like 10 minutes in. Quite the beatdown for. I mean, we won't go long because we have 13 games to cover here today. But Edmonton, a lot of their early struggles, one obviously was goaltending. Two was, Connor McDavid looked like he was kind of hurt. He didn't really look that hurt to me last night. And they were getting really unlucky by shooting percentages earlier in the season, like for the first month. I think that's kind of started to turn around over the last few weeks. And they're only like 6 points out of a playoff spot in the West now. Like, they can be in a playoff spot in like by Christmas. They're starting to look a little bit better. They obviously need some more depth, but they're starting to look more like themselves.
Yeah, and they absolutely crushed the bye week model. Came off their bye week and just put up a massive number. Usually you see teams come out slow after the bye week. They put up 2 goals in 41 seconds. Zach Hyman had a hat trick. I didn't play too much last night, but I did stack Carolina, so I fell asleep after those two goals. Woke up, checked the box score, didn't even bother logging in. I knew the result. So yeah, I mean, we have a massive slate here. Our top stacks isn't fully updated yet. There are still some things that we need to get updated. So if you hear us mention ownership, it's probably going to change. If you are a premium member, just be aware of the updates. There's some Wings stuff, which is an important game on the slate that needs to be updated. So just bear that in mind. Huge 13-game slate, though. Very disappointed in the GPPs on DraftKings today because it is a 2-game NBA slate, the worst NFL game in the history of sports, and they rolled out 10K, 50K guaranteed in the 150X. I don't want to complain, but I'm complaining. As I say, I don't want to complain, but I was hoping for better. Hopefully on Tuesday, they have that big 888 abominable snowman or whatever it is. Hopefully they have corresponding 88s and an 8 or something with good prizes. So let's get into the slate. But before you do, you guys know the drill. Give us a like and subscribe to keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. If YouTube isn't for you and you're listening on your way home from work, you already know, but you can find all of our content over on the Stochastic podcast channels, except for the Live Before Locks, because they don't have a shelf life. Don't forget to sign up for the Stochastic Hall of Fame by changing your avatar on DraftKings and FanDuel. You also get a shout-out on the weekly Hall of Fame segment. Download the Stochastic avatar on stochastic.com/avatar. Place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5K contestants. Tweet the wins to @StochasticHOF account on Twitter or X. If you don't have that machine, you can email us with your screenshot and you'll win a free month of Stochastic package of your choosing. Buffalo Sabres with a 2.4 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 3.7 total. News here. There is some sort of illness going through the Bruins locker room. Swayman is confirmed out. The coach said there are a couple other guys who he did not mention dealing with it. So we'll have to wait and see. Luckily, it is the first game of the slate, so they will be warming up before lock. If their skaters are fully healthy, they're going to go Pasternak, Zacha, DeBrusk, Marchand, Coyle, Geeky, and then Van Riemsdyk, Poitras, and Frederick. 3.7 total going into Buffalo is a good matchup. Like, Buffalo's been bad this season. They, like you said, they'll have their occasional game where they look like they're a playoff team, but more often than not, they just lay eggs. Pasternak, Zacha, DeBrusk is an interesting stack. It is a 13-game slate, so 9% ownership is fairly high. They still have positive leverage for their top 2 stack percentage, so that's good. But again, we will have to get an updated one because some of the Wings lines are somewhat similar in price there. So I would imagine the Wings ownership comes up a lot, and some of these mid-range to under 20K lines come down a little bit. So I am interested in Buffalo 1. On the Buffalo side, it's a bit interesting. It's the lowest total on the slate. They have a lower total than the Sharks, which is hilarious to say. But Derek Forbort's out. He's one of their better defensive defensemen. These Boston lines haven't been great defensively as it is. The one saving grace is Ullmark. He's been great. Now, Tage Thompson did return the other day, and he is on the wing. Jeff Skinner's wing. Casey Middlestat in center. That line is a bit interesting to me in MME. I don't think I'm going to get there in 1 to 3 at 17,700. But I think if I was playing even 20, I'd be over the field on that number. The more lineups you make, I think the more Buffalo you can have. I'm not, saying go all in on them by any stretch of the imagination. They have the lowest total on the slate, but that line does interest me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the Sabres. I think the top line is fine to play if you're playing a lot of lineups here tonight. Obviously, on a slate with 26 teams, not sure you necessarily have to stack Buffalo going into Boston. Like, losing Forbort does hurt the Bruins defensively. He is their best defensive defenseman, and he's excellent on the penalty kill as well. But they have more than enough to make up for it beyond that. And Buffalo's had their struggles creating offense this year. Tage Thompson or not, so. I think Buffalo 1 for an ownership play is perfectly fine. If you're playing, the 20 max or the 150 or anything like that, I think in single entry you can pass. It is Boston 1 for me that I have interest in here. Wrote them up in the picks article today. Free to read over at Stokastic.com. Just head on over to the NHL section. And one thing that I kind of noticed is they're not super expensive, right? Like, I'll bring up top stacks. They're 19,800 on DraftKings here tonight. But they're third by top 2 stack percentage. See that 13.1%. Third by top 2 stack percentage and coming in with positive leverage. And I'm not super worried about a top line matchup against this Buffalo team. Like, the top line's defensive numbers are much worse with Alex Tuch out of the lineup. He is a good two-way winger. And, Rasmus Dahlin might not be playing tonight, and he's not a great defensive defenseman, but he is their best defenseman overall. It just doesn't really leave a whole lot that I'm worried about. Devin Levi getting the start. I'm still a big Devin Levi guy. Maybe he just needed a couple weeks in the AHL to kind of right himself. He did post good numbers down there, but Boston 1 under 20K. You get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. Buffalo's penalty kill I mentioned in that article, like bottom 10 numbers. Expected goals against, shots against, goals against over the last 4 weeks. Boston doesn't draw a ton of power plays. They're right about on the league average, but they can absolutely tear apart this weak Buffalo penalty kill. So it's Boston 1 I like in this game by quite a bit.
Yeah. You would think with Tage Thompson back in the lineup, they're eventually going to figure something out. You would hope, but, we'll see. Let's get to another banger. San Jose Sharks with a 2.5 total heading into Detroit. The Red Wings have a 4 total. Patty Kane going to make his season debut on the second line. He is 5,500. I'm not even going to mention the Detroit ownership here because we still have JT Compher in the top stacks, and he is out. Top line is Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, Robbie Fabry. Second line is Kane, DeBrincat, and Veleno. This top line, Larkin, Raymond, Fabry, from a power play perspective, is a mess because they ran new power play units today. Larkin's on the top power play unit. Raymond and Fabry are in the second unit. The top unit is Larkin, DeBrincat, Kane, David Perron, and Shane Gostisbehere. So this is a really good matchup at any strength for Detroit. I think there's multiple ways you can go about it. I think the more popular line is going to be the second line with DeBrincat and Kane. I think you're going to see a lot of Larkin, DeBrincat, Kane stacks. I think, full stacking the second line is fine. Full stacking the The top line is fine. I think power play stacking is a good way to go. If you want to avoid some of the heavier ownership, I think you can one-off David Perron. I think that's fine. Listen, like when teams are playing the Sharks, there's really not much to say. You play the guys, they're going to get ownership. There's plenty of ways to get different on the slate. I think the more interesting side for me is the San Jose Sharks, and they have a 2.5 total, which for them on the road isn't bad, honestly. And Hurdle's coming off a hat trick. Now, you're not going to really know much about that because he scored those 3 goals like late against the Islanders, and the Islanders suck. But the thing is here, like as good as Detroit is offensively, they suck defensively too. And I do not want to play Mikael Granlund. If you want to play that line, go for it. I just listen. I know he had 7 shots the other day, but he's more of a player that relies on assists. He's kind of like the Alex Wenberg model for DFS. He's maybe a better player than he is a DFS player. Maybe not. Maybe he's just bad. But I'm more interested in Hurdle, Eklund, Barabanov. Barabanov coming back is a nice boost to that top line. Hurdle and Eklund have good numbers together. There isn't a matchup on the Detroit side that worries me. So I don't mind getting to Hurdle Eklund here. They're 11,700. They let you get in the expensive stuff. On the Detroit side, do whatever you want. The good news is Kane is on the top power play unit. So even if you think he's washed 5-on-5, he can still contribute on the power play. He's still very good there.
Yeah, I will go the other direction for San Jose and say that I like the Granlund, Zetterlund, Duclair line a little bit better. 2 reasons. One, they're just generating more expected goals, 2.5 compared to the 2 for Hurdle and Barabanov. So, Hurdle's still not really shooting a lot, like 10 shot attempts per 60 minutes over his last few weeks. Like he's just getting lucky on the shots. I mean, they're all getting lucky, let's face it. But he's just getting lucky on the shots that he faces. At least that San Jose Granlund line is generating some offense. And they're going to go up against the Veleno Kane line, either that or the Copp Perron line. Like neither one. You're right. There isn't a matchup I'm worried about defensively in particular. But if I have to choose, I would prefer to go up against their second and third lines rather than Larkin, Fabry, and Raymond. So I don't mind the Granlund line here, but it's another one of those situations where I think I'd be more inclined just to like one-off Fabian Zetterlund or one-off Anthony Duclair than I would be to full stack the line. They can still get there. They play a ton of minutes. That's the thing is like if San Jose scores 3 goals, almost all the goals are going to come from the top 6, right? Other than Jacob McDonald had that 2-goal game the other night or whatever, but the guys that play all the minutes and have all the talent are going to get the goals. It's kind of like a really bad Colorado in that sense. But I prefer the Detroit side here. I wrote up Dylan Larkin in the picks article. Lucas Raymond getting booted off the top power play unit is definitely not what you want to see if you're stacking them, but they're going to come in with incredibly low ownership. Larkin and Raymond have been really, really good this year with or without DeBrincat. They're generating roughly the same amount of expected goals, whether DeBrincat's on the line or not. I think Raymond's kind of taken another step offensively this year. I'm not really worried about either matchup on the San Jose side. I think you're right. You're going to see a lot of Larkin, DeBrincat, Kane stacks just because on DraftKings, at least, that second line for Detroit is triple wing, but it's Detroit 1 for me. I always want to play the line that has the best player on it, and that's Dylan Larkin. He's been one of the better offensive players in the league this year, just flat out. So for me, it's Larkin, Raymond, and Fabry. If you want to just power play stack, I think that's fine. The Sharks penalty kill still nothing great. Detroit draws a ton of power play opportunities. They're tied for the most now power play opportunities per game in the league. So if you want to just Detroit power play stack, that might be a better way to approach it. But if we're stacking 5-on-5 lines, it's Detroit 1 for me.
You know what? And Fabry isn't the player he was because of injuries. He on St. Louis or whatever, but he's not some third wheel that. He's a good player. He lost a step because of injuries or whatever, but he definitely belongs in that top 6. So I am on board with the Detroit analysis there. We differ on the Sharks, but you know what? We're not going to agree every time. No. Los Angeles Kings, the 3.5 total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 2.6 total. I was out most of the day Tuesday. I literally got home right before lock, so I didn't play much, but I know a lot of people were on the Kopitar Kempe Byfield line and they kind of got burned a little bit there. not for lack of trying. Kempe had a couple posts, I think. But anyway, don't need to harp on that. I think this is another great matchup for the Kings here tonight. I think either the top two lines are in play. They're getting no ownership here. They are the thing that does worry me. It's not really a huge worry, and I think it gives you more to think about. You should say, instead of just slamming LA1. You know what I mean? Montreal takes a ton of penalties, and the Kings have kind of split the time pretty evenly on their two power play units. So I think you can go to either of the top two lines. I think you go to the third line too. It's just a matter of, which power play unit you think is going to get a little more time. It varies. Usually the Kopitar unit gets a little bit more. I think Kempe is the best player on the Kings. So I tend to default to the Kopitar line. But I think three lines are in play here for the Kings. On the Montreal side, I don't mind getting to that top line in MME. It's just, this is not a good matchup. Cam Talbot in net for the Kings. He's one of the league leaders in goal saves above expected, which is a stat that I kind of like to look at instead of save percentage. So I'm kind of in on Montreal 1 in MME, but this is a Kings game for me.
Yeah. I think it's pretty safe to say Montreal has their top three offensive players on the same line. I mean, I know people like to take pot shots at Slavkovsky. He doesn't really have a lot of points yet this year, but he did look good in that game against Seattle. I think Montreal 1, like you said, is fine to play. They're kind of like Buffalo 1 in that sense. If you want super low ownership, 150 max or something like that, I think that's fine. But it's Kings 2 that I like the best here. Fiala, Morton, Danault. A couple reasons for that. One, the Montreal second and third lines are not good defensively. And beyond that, Caden Gooley is actually a pretty good defensive defenseman. And he goes out against top lines constantly. But once you get after Caden Gooley, it is fire wagon hockey for Montreal. They really don't have any defensemen, not healthy ones anyway, that can step up defensively. So I think it gives Fiala, Moore, and Danault really good matchups against the second and third lines for Montreal, against their second and third defense pairs. I wrote up Fiala in the picks article today. His shot rate has really come up after a slow start this year. He's added, I mentioned in that picks article, he added 0.9 shots per game since being moved to the Danault line, and they're creating 12% more expected goals and 19% more actual goals. So even though Fiala's ice time actually went down like a minute with the move to the Danault line, he's actually seeing more better efficiency and taking more shots, which is really important. As far as the power play goes, I mentioned it in our Discord, but I think it's been 9 games now since Arber Xhekaj has been injured for Montreal. And up until his injury, they were taking 4.4 penalties per game. Since his injury, it's 2.4. And 2.4 is like a full power play less per game that they're giving up compared to the league average. The league average is a little over 3.3 right now. So they're taking a lot fewer penalties, and like the penalty kill is still not good, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like that St. Louis situation, right? Where maybe they might not, maybe the penalty kill isn't good, but they're also not giving up enough power plays for it to really kill them. Now, it's only 9 games. Might have been 8 games, 9 games. Things can turn around, but Xhekaj is a guy that takes a ton of penalties. So maybe that's just something to think about here tonight. It's another reason why I'm not putting a ton of stock into the Kings top line with their perfect power play correlation. As you mentioned, no ownership on Los Angeles. In fact, Los Angeles 2 is coming in with a higher top 2 stack percentage than Los Angeles 1. The Kings top line is still kind of dominating play, but they're not generating as much quality offense as they used to be. Their last 3 weeks, 2.9 expected goals, 2.6 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. I like Kings 2 here. They're easily my favorite line in this game, and they're actually one of my favorite lines on the slate here tonight. I think you're muted.
I am muted. I was going to say, if you like Kings 2, you play Kings 2. I'm a big Kempe guy. I have a bias towards him. And if you like Kings 1, I think they're a good play as well. It just depends on your build, really. So you can take bits and pieces from Kings 3, even if you want. Pierre Dubois has been pretty bad this season. I would imagine when Arvidsson comes back, maybe he slides to the wing somewhere, but we don't have time for those shenanigans. But yeah, Kings game. Toronto Maple Leafs. They 3.4 total heading into Ottawa. The Senators have a 3.2 total. Shocker that Klingberg went on long-term IR. The creators of the Robodias Island add someone to the island, and they're like, oh, wow, he has a hip problem. And then they're going to get mad when the Lightning win the cup, and they're like 26 million over the cap. Boo-hoo. Anyway, this is an interesting game, one that we talked about before the show. With Ottawa at home, oh, by the way, I just want to, give you a pat on the back for your Ottawa 2 call on Tuesday. Absolutely lit up my Rangers and Igor Shesterkin. Hopefully it won some people some money. Very good call there. Yeah, Igor sucks, but yeah, please relax, people. At home, the Senators send out Norris, Brady Tkachuk, and Giroux against the Austin Matthews line, which is interesting because, as you mentioned to me, the Tavares, Marner, Bertuzzi line is the much better defensive line in the top 6 for the Leafs, and that kind of sucks because Stützle, Batherson, Tarasenko is going to go out against Tavares, Marner, and Bertuzzi. It's still a decent matchup because the Leafs' blue line is bad and their goaltending hasn't been great, so I don't mind Ottawa 2 here. I'm more interested in Ottawa 1. They're getting positive leverage. That Matthews, Nylander, Nyes line has been pretty bad. Not a big Norris guy, but Norris, Tkachuk, Giroux have pretty good numbers together. So that is my preferred line on the Ottawa side. On the Toronto side, I mean, it's a pretty good matchup for both lines. I'm going to go to Matthews and Nylander here. Like Jake says, play the good lines. Like you say, play the best player in the game. Probably Matthews. I'm going to go to Matthews, Nylander, and Nyes. I think Tavares, Marner, and Bertuzzi are fine. They're coming with a little bit higher ownership, though. They are cheaper.
Yeah, I'll talk about Ottawa 1 because I did write up Brady Tkachuk for the picks article. What I mentioned in that article is that even with Josh Norris as a center, and Josh Norris is one of the guys that I'm starting to like a lot less, that I liked a lot more a couple of years ago for DFS. Now, not so much. Josh Norris, his playmaking data is bad this year. I mentioned in our Discord, his expected goals generated over the last 4 weeks on a per minute basis is the same as Charlie McAvoy, who is a defenseman. That kind of tells you what Josh Norris has been doing on the top line, which is absolutely nothing. But Brady Tkachuk, his projection is really strong today. These are all the wingers under 8K on DraftKings, and Brady Tkachuk is right at the top. It's higher than Kaprizov. He's clearing Matt Barzal by 0.84 DK points. He's, 1.3 points ahead of the third place winger. Like, he is clearly head and shoulders above everyone else. He's still playing pretty well with Claude Giroux, which is pretty important, obviously, for this matchup. But just in general, because for this matchup, because they are going to go out against the Matthews line. Matthews and Nylander have been awful defensively this season. It's actually kind of shocking. And I know people like to make fun of Toronto and their defense and et cetera, et cetera. And I like to do that too. But typically the Matthews line is pretty good defensively, when they don't have their lapses. Their numbers are awful so far this year. Like, they're numbers that you'd expect to see on San Jose. That's how bad it's been. So I really like Ottawa 1 here tonight. In the top stacks tool, they're coming in with good leverage. I'll show Toronto and Ottawa here. They're coming in 3.8% leverage because only 3.5% ownership on DK, 7.3% ownership. I'm not sure that there's a ton of power play upside here, which is why I kind of think I'd like Brady Tkachuk as a one-off more than full stacking. But if I don't mind Ottawa 1 here. And what I will say quickly is that Ottawa 2, they started last game getting matched up against the second line, against the Panarin line for the Rangers. And by midway through the game, they were going out against the third and fourth lines. And that's when they started to do their damage. I'm wondering if they don't go back to that tonight. And then they're going out against the Toronto third and fourth lines. Like, it might be a good night for them. But I do like Ottawa 1. I will say I like Brady Tkachuk specifically as a one-off. on the Toronto side, it is Toronto 2 that I actually kind of like, which feels weird to say. Like, I'm not worried about a Ridley Grigg matchup. Let's put it that way. Like, I'm just not. That like, if that's a matchup Ottawa wants to go to, that is not a matchup that I'm concerned about for Tavares and company. They are coming in with a little bit of negative leverage on the top 2 stacks, but it's not a lot. They're quite a bit cheaper than the top line. You still get the 2 guys on the top power play unit. If you want to go to Toronto 1, no issues there. It's not like any Ottawa line is really tremendous defensively or anything like that. But I do like Toronto 2's matchup a little bit better here. But it is the Ottawa top line I like best in this game.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement there. The Leafs, my feelings on the Leafs. I don't need to harp on it. Columbus Blue Jackets with a 2.7 total heading into Long Island. Sucks for everybody. The Islanders have a 3.7 total. Islanders coming off a game where they had a 3-goal lead against the Sharks with 8 minutes left and they lost. I don't know what's going on with that. Well, I kind of do know what's going on with the Islanders. They suck. Their coach sucks, et cetera, et cetera. They need someone on the top line badly. Anders Lee is not it. I just don't have too much. I just don't have too much interest in Columbus here tonight. I wish I did. I wish they had a line that I wanted to play, but Justin Danforth on the top line with Gaudreau and Jenner just really isn't doing it for me. If you want to one-off Marchenko, I think that's fine. Like, the Islanders penalty kill is atrocious, so I think you can one-off some of their power play 1 guys, or Islanders penalty kill, I should say. I think I said power play. So I'm fine with one-offing some of Columbus's power play guys. Other than that, don't have much interest in Columbus. On the Islanders side, we'll have to see an updated run on ownership with the wing stuff in, because right now the Islanders are super negative leverage. 14% on the Horvat line, 10.3% on the Brock Nelson line. It's a good matchup. I get it. If we have a 3.7 total, these lines are cheap. I just don't like how they've been playing. They're one of those teams that they have the defensemen take a lot of the shots, and I don't really love their defensemen outside of Dobson. I know Barzal's been playing well. I guess you can one-off Barzal. You can 2-man him with Horvat. Horvat's somewhat coming to life, and he is fairly cheap. I just don't know if I want to play chalk Islanders on a 13-game slate.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about this game. Here are the top stacks. A lot of negative leverage on the top 2 lines for the Islanders. Nobody's playing Columbus. You don't want to play Columbus, go ahead. I'm not. Patrick Laine out for the Columbus. I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but he's out tonight. Merzlikins is also out. For me, it's the Islanders top line. They have looked better offensively with Anders Lee there. It's just a lot of ownership. DFS players are going to have to decide whether they want to play like a 15% owned Islanders top line on a 13-game slate. I don't have a huge problem with it. I will say Columbus doesn't take a lot of penalties, and their goaltenders have been absolutely absurd on the penalty kill for whatever reason. That screams regression to me. The Islanders do have a really good power play. I will say I do like Islanders 1 a lot here tonight. It's just there's a lot of ownership, so people are going to have to decide whether they want to play that ownership or not.
Yeah, I mean, if we get a rerun soon and they come down into single digits, it might be a little bit more palpable, but I don't know. Chalk Islanders leaves a weird taste in my mouth. If you are looking to take your game to the next level, sign up using the link in the description box below to get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. You get player and ownership projections, top stacks tools, line combinations, and you get access to the Discord. Cliffy is showing all the stuff that we show on the show. You'll have access to it 24/7. And you'll also get access to the Discord if you have lineup questions. If you have any kind of questions, we'll answer it for you. Cliff and I are always in there. Jake and his Giga Chad jawline are in there. We have a lot of sharp minds. So click that link in the description below. You can get weekly. You can get monthly. You can add on Fantasy Cruncher. Thank you, Fantasy Cruncher. Let's move on to the next one here. Tampa Bay Lightning with a 3.2 total heading into Nashville. The Predators have a 3.3. Tampa obviously played last night, and it was Vasilevsky in that. Would imagine after back surgery coming back less than a month ago, he's not going to go back-to-back. It's probably going to be...
They already confirmed Johansson.
Yeah, Jonas Johansson in that. That brings Nashville's top line into play, and I was hoping there would be a little bit less ownership on them. There is positive leverage. They're coming in at 5.3% projected. I'm a big Nashville 1 guy. It's not the best matchup per se. It's one of those things where it's like the goalie's really bad, and they're fully correlated on the power play. So I don't know if I'm going to get there in 1-3 because they're 18-4, and there is a ton of lines around that price range in better spots. The big question here is what to do with Tampa 1, right? They're 24,100. They're fully correlated on the power play, and this is a good power play spot. Almost no ownership here. It's back-to-back on the road is the one thing. Like, do you want to hinge your night on a back-to-back on the road, $24,000 line? I don't know. But I do like Tampa 1 here.
Yeah, I think Tampa 1 is perfectly in play here, especially with Colorado doing to their lines what they're doing. But I don't think it's not a tremendous spot for Tampa at 5-on-5. Like, if they get there, they have to get there on the power play. And they can get there on the power play. Nikita Kucherov is up to 22 power play points now, which, like, that's a pretty good total for, like, 97% of the league for a full season. Like, it's absolutely insane what that guy has done. Problem is Nashville's top line, their offensive numbers have come down a little bit since a hot start. Part of it driven by shooting percentage. They're shooting under 7% in their last 100 minutes together 5-on-5. But the defensive numbers have been really, really good. 2.3 expected goals against, 1.8 actual goals against per 60 minutes. So if Tampa Bay does get there, they have to get there pretty much entirely through the power play. And if Tampa has to get there almost entirely through the power play, that means it brings guys like Nick Paul, guys like Victor Hedman into the stack. So I think, like, if you don't want to pay way up for a super expensive Tampa stack, like, you can 2-man like Kucherov and Hedman and go along, or 2-man like Paul and Kucherov and then, go about your business. I don't think you necessarily just have to 3-man stack Tampa Bay's entire top line, because if they are one of the top stacks on the slate tonight, it's going to be because of the power play, and there are 2 other guys on that power play that are worth attention. So that's all I'll say about that. It is Nashville 1 I do like here. I'm not worried about the matchup against Tampa Bay, and because they go out against the top line, and Tampa Bay's top line is kind of like Pittsburgh's in that they love trading chances back and forth. So far this year for Tampa's top line, 3.7 expected goals for, 3.5 expected goals against per 60 minutes. They've actually been outscored at 5-on-5. And, Nashville's penalty power play, not great, but it's not awful. They do draw a lot of opportunities. They're at 3.8 power play opportunities per game, which I think is like fourth in the league for power play opportunities per game. What might be a tired Tampa team, I really do like Nashville 1. Tommy Novak coming back for Nashville is also really interesting, because that might boot Colton Sissons off the top power play unit. Not sure how exactly that's going to work.
Hopefully it does.
Yeah, hopefully it does, because Tommy Novak is a pretty underrated playmaker. He had 6 goals, 6 assists in 14 games before he got hurt. He's coming in on the second line with Yusuf Parson and Luke Evangelista. It's not a good matchup at 5-on-5. I'm not playing Nashville 2 or anything like that. But if Novak's back on the top power play unit, I think that's a boost to the rest of the power play and would honestly make me like Nashville 1 a little bit more. We won't know until the game starts, so there's nothing we can say about that. But I really do like this spot for Nashville 1 here tonight.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because that line got so much better when Nyquist went there. And Nyquist is definitely not the player he was, but, like, he stabilized that line on both ends of the ice.
I mean, yeah, sometimes it's just about chemistry and players being able to read each other and things like that. And, Nyquist is a veteran. They all are at this point. So, yeah, they look good.
Yeah. Dallas Stars with a 3.1 total heading into Washington. The Capitals have a 2.8 total. Interesting game here because Dallas played last night. They lost 5-4. We're not going to know these lines because Sagan left the game in the third period. Don't know if he's going to play tonight. Jason Robertson got kicked off the top line. Don't know if they're going to have their lines together tonight. So I want to get behind behind Dallas here. It's a good matchup. We just don't know what their lines are going to be. We don't know if Sagan's playing. So it's one of those things where, like, maybe you can win off a Duchesne. He played 20 minutes last night. The Duchesne power play unit ended up, getting the first crack in the last few power plays of the game. So I guess you can one off Duchesne, you can go Duchesne Marchment, but I don't know. Like it's just a lot of question marks here for the Stars tonight. Wedgwood probably in net for the Stars. I want to kind of like Washington a little bit here at low ownership, but like I just don't know, man. Like, they're super cheap. Like, if anything, it'd be like McMichael Mantha for some super cheap two-mans, but like I don't know, man. Washington Capitals look rough.
Yeah, what I'll say about this is, you're right. We won't know what the Dallas lineup is, but this is also a 13-game slate, and by the time Dallas warm-ups start, only 5 other games will have locked, which means there will be 8 games to pick from if you have all players starting in later games. So you can late swap to what is going almost any Dallas combination here tonight is going to be low owned because nobody knows what the lines are unless people just, jam in old Dallas one and go on their, go about their business. There is an opportunity for a late swap here in this game because, Washington is a really bad team. I will say Washington's penalty kill has been kind of like middle of the pack over the last few weeks, and that's where Dallas gets a lot of their DFS value from. So maybe it's not the best power play matchup, especially where Washington doesn't take a ton of penalties. They're below average in that regard. But it is otherwise a good matchup for Dallas. And I think, just put like Nashville one with a bunch of Dallas guys in the lineup and then wait to see what the lineup, warm-ups look like at 7:30 Eastern. I think that's a viable strategy here for tonight. Like, other than that, I agree with you. It's probably like a two-man of McMichael and Mantha. I'm getting Kuznetsov his back, but seeing him skate with Hendricks, Lapierre, Matthew Phillips makes me think that they're actually going to be the fourth line here because Nick Dowd's line actually plays a fair bit when they're at home because sometimes they get the shutdown matchups. Obviously, Ovechkin's line is going to get used heavily. And then McMichael and Mantha have been playing well and getting like 13, 15 minutes, somewhere in that range. So they might end up like a pseudo second line here. So, Michael and Mantha, 3.5 expected goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 and 110 minutes together. I think it's a nice little two-man if you want to pay up elsewhere. Otherwise, like, I don't mind making essentially an all late slate lineup and then just waiting on the Dallas line combinations because I think with how poorly Washington is playing, it might be worth a gamble here tonight.
And I'm wondering if Sagan doesn't play that they load the top line with like they put Duchesne up there with Henson, Robertson or something, try to make it work. I don't know. It's one of those things like if you do have that late lineup and they do run a J-Rob, Hintz, Duchesne, I think that could be a very low-owned combination. So
yeah,
keep that in the back of your noodle if you are thinking about that. This feels like an important game, which is hilarious to say. The Anaheim Ducks with a 3.2 total heading into Chicago. The Blackhawks have a 3.2 total as well. Lucas Reichel is back tonight. I don't know if he's going to go to the top power play unit. It's interesting because the power play for the last game was Bedard, Kurashev, Jones, Radish, and Johnson. So if Reichel does go to the top power play unit, not sure who replaces there. Maybe Radish, maybe Johnson. Interesting enough, like Beauvillier didn't go to the top power play unit last game either, but that top line for Chicago, Bedard, Kurashev, Beauvillier, 2 of the 3 on the top power play unit. This is good power play spots, good 5-on-5 spots. So I don't mind Chicago one here. They are a bit negatively leveraged, 6.1% projected, 3.8 top 2 stack. I think it's fine. The Ducks top line, Carlson, Terry, Killorn, coming in very negatively leveraged, almost 14% ownership here. I wanted to like them until I saw their ownership. So I think like maybe you go to the second line, but like I just don't want to play a Strome, Vetrano, Silfverberg line at negative leverage either. So like if you're going to play the Ducks top line, just know that, you're going to get some pretty heavy ownership there. So for me, Chicago 1 is my favorite line in this game.
Yeah, I mean, even if you wanted to go to the Ducks second line, they switched up their lines last game. They moved Silfverberg off the line and they moved Benoit Gros up with Strome and Vetrano. And it's like, well, congrats to Benoit Gros for getting to the top 6, but that doesn't do anything for me. Yeah, I'm with you. I wanted to play Carlson, Terry, and Killorn, but they're coming in with a ton of ownership. As you mentioned, 13.7% per the top 2 stacks. it is a good spot against Chicago. Obviously, Chicago, their defensive metrics are absolutely awful. There's really no shutdown matchup to be concerned about. There's just a lot of ownership. They're basically like the Islanders, but on the road here tonight. So I do like Anaheim 1. There's just a lot of ownership. If you just want a one-off, Alex Killorn or something like that for somebody cheap or whatever, I think that's fine. But I'm just worried about, 15%, what could be like 15% Anaheim here on the road. It is the Chicago side that I do like better here. Bedard getting Anthony Beauvillier gives him another shooter on that line. They are coming in negatively leveraged, as you mentioned, 6.1% against the 3.8% top 2 stack percentage. That's nothing like too extreme. And you can throw Seth Jones on the blue line, even though he's going to be higher owned. You can throw Seth Jones on the blue line. You can take Beauvillier off and put, Tyler Johnson on for a power play stack. And Anaheim is still the most penalized team in the league by a mile. They're at 4.4 times shorthanded per game. And no other team is above 3.9. So they're giving up an extra power play over 2 games compared to the next most penalized team, which should tell you just how many penalties they are actually taking. Now Chicago's power play really bad, but if you give them 4, 5, 6 opportunities, they might be able to get on the board here. And Chicago's top line, 3 expected goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 without Nick Foligno there. What a surprise, but they are generating quite a bit of offense. Beauvillier's look, kind of at home here. I don't mind Chicago 1, even at like 6% ownership or whatever. Like, it is a really, really good matchup for them. 3.2 total. It's the same as Ottawa that we talked about and how much we like, parts of the Ottawa top 6. So, yeah, I like Chicago 1 in this one.
Yeah. This is the first time I'm actually considering a Chicago line in my 1 to 3. And it's a 13-game slate. So, yay me. Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.9 total. Heading into Arizona, the Coyotes have a 3 total. I was on Arizona 2 the other night when they scored like 14 goals, and Arizona 2 didn't do anything. It was the Cooley Schmaltz Keller line, but it was all on the power play. Not all, but like a lot of it was on the power play. So let's pump the brakes here. This is a tough power play spot. I don't really love the Arizona Coyotes here tonight anyway. This is a tough matchup. I mean, the Schmaltz-Cooley-Keller line is going to avoid Couturier because they've been sending out the Bukestad line against top comp at home. If you want to play Arizona 1, I think they can be in your portfolio. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a hater, but like that line is so much better with Hayton than it is with Cooley. Kind of interested in that Couturier-Konechny-Forrester line. Arizona takes a bunch of penalties. Couturier-Konechny on the top power play unit. Couturier-Konechny, the best players on the Flyers. They are coming in right at their top 2 stack percentage. They're 15-5. They do have a 2.9 total, which isn't great, but they are on the road, and it is the Flyers, so you're going to expect it up on the top line there. So don't mind Couturier-Konechny here tonight.
Yeah, I also like that Flyers line. In fact, I liked them so much that I wrote them up in the picks article. It's, John Tortorella finally found a top line that he'll leave together. They're up to 100 minutes together this year. 3 expected goals, 3.5 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, controlling 61% of all shot attempts. They're getting between 18.5 and 20.5 minutes every game. All 3 on the top power play unit. As you said, power play's been bad, but at least all 3 of them are there. The note about Arizona here is, one, their second line, their defensive numbers have started to slide a little bit, which I think is kind of expected because they were really, really good defensively in a smaller sample. As the sample's getting bigger, the defense has fallen off. 2.7 expected goals against in their last 60 minutes together. They're going to go up against Philly's top line. That's a matchup that favors Philly. And Arizona might be without Sean Durzi here tonight. They said he's going to be a game-time decision. He left the game last game halfway through. Now, that's another reason why I don't like Arizona here tonight is that if Durzi doesn't play, Matt Dumba took over the top power play unit. And I don't know if anybody's seen Matt Dumba run a power play in the last 3 or 4 years, but there's a very good reason why they were using anybody else in Minnesota but Matt Dumba on the top power play unit. Like they called up Brad Hunt, who was an AHLer, to run the power play because they couldn't trust Matt Dumba to do it. And you talk about how Arizona, got there on the power play last game. Anything can happen in hockey, but I can't imagine that happening again here tonight. So for me, if you want to dip down into the Arizona depth, I think that's fine. They're still generating some offenses, particularly the second line, and they're still getting good minutes. But it's Philly one I like in this game by a lot. Bad power play match. Well, every power play matchup's a bad one for them, but it's not a great power play matchup, but it's a tremendous 5-on-5 matchup for them. And if Arizona doesn't have Durzi, they really don't have any puck movers on the blue line. So I like Philly one in this game by a lot.
Yeah, Troy Stetcher might be their best puck mover after that. And yikes. As we mentioned off the top of the show, we are sponsored by Better Picks, and you can double your first deposit up to $500. Better Pick takes traditional fantasy picking concept and amplifies it with the ability to win up to 100x your entry if you correctly select up to 8 picks. Choose wisely and watch your winnings soar. Forget about frustrating ties and pushes. Actually, some books even grade pushes as losses now. Like ESPN Bet grades some pushes as losses. It's quite a scene. Better Picks keeps the excitement flowing with no pushes allowed. Every pick counts and every decision matters as you strive for victory. Better Picks covers a wide range of sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, and more. Whether you're a seasoned sports fan or a casual enthusiast, we offer an extensive selection of player projections to choose from. Dive into the action, analyze the stats, and trust your instincts to make the winning picks. Again, the legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus, and if you or anyone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Carolina Hurricanes with a 3.3 total heading into Calgary. The Flames have a 3.1 total. We did it. Dustin Wolf starting tonight. Markstrom's week to week. They still wanted to start whatever his name is, the backup that they don't want to lose on waivers of Vladar the other night. Wolf, 7,300 tonight. We'll get to goalies at the end. The big news here, no idea what the Carolina lines are going to be. None. Because after they got down in that first period, Rod the Bod started picking names out of a hat. It was like John Tortorella blender style. So who knows? I would imagine the lines are going to be different tonight because they got absolutely destroyed last night. I wouldn't be surprised to see Bunting on the fourth line, Netchus on the second line, Svechnikov on the first line. This is a good matchup, though. But it's a late game. So I think you just kind of go with pairs that you hope are together, and you hope Aho and Jarvis are going to be together, maybe Kotkaniemi and Teravainen. But if you are playing Carolina here tonight, just know whatever you put in could be a gamble.
Yeah, I was looking earlier. Aho, Jarvis, Bunting obviously started the game. They played 4 shifts together, and then they were broken up. And then they went to Aho, Natchez, Bunting, and they played 6 shifts together, and then they were broken up. And then they went to Aho, Svechnikov, Teravainen. They played the final 6 shifts of the game. So Aho had 2 different sets of wingers for at least 4 different shifts last night. So we are just completely guessing at what the lines might be. That's what makes it real tough. And you can't do, you can if you want to, because there's still 5 late games. You can't really just make a bunch of late swaps. What I will say is that Carolina does have 4 wingers all within $700 of each other, and the 4 wingers typically all play in the top 6. So if you put Aho with any of those 2 wingers, there's a pretty good bet that you'll be able to swap to whatever the Aho line is and not really leave that much money on the table. So there are ways that you can stack Carolina here tonight. You're just going to have to be around for warm-ups at 8:30 Eastern, 8:35 Eastern, whatever it might be, and be ready to make those swaps. But there are a bunch of wingers that are all priced similarly. Where you'll get in trouble is if Jack Drury got moved up to the second line. If they decide to do something like Jack Drury, Svechnikov, Natchez, and then they put Fast and Jarvis or whatever with Aho, then you're kind of boned. That's kind of the gamble that you have to take. And honestly, on a 13-game slate, I don't think it's really necessary. There are a lot, you can do it with Dallas and have more games to pick from. And there are a lot of spots where you can get 1, 2, 3% ownership on your lines. I don't think it's really necessary to chase Carolina. Like if you want to just one-off some guys, I think that makes sense. I don't think it's really necessary to chase it, but that option is there. Calgary, like, I don't know, man. I was telling you before the game, Nazem Kadri has 1 goal at 5-on-5 this year. Like, surprise, surprise, adding Yegor Sharangovich has not been the answer to the top power play unit. Like, this team is just not a good team for DFS in any sense of the word. They're honestly a poor man's Seattle at this point, which is kind of scary to think about. If I were to take anything, it would be the Backlund, Coleman, Huberdeau line. At least they're generating something. 2.8 expected goals for, 2.7 actual goals for. Probably going to go out against the Kotkaniemi line. Might end up being the Jack Drury line, depending on how Carolina lines up at warmups. But at least they've been generating some offense and not necessarily relying on shooting percentages as the Calgary top line has been. So Backlund, Coleman, and Huberdeau for me. But I'm going to be honest, other than picking some one-offs, there's really not a stack I like in this game.
Yeah, agreed there. Winnipeg Jets with a 2.8 total. Heading into Colorado, the Avs have a 3.2. A lot of Avs news here. McKinnon's in, McCarr's in, Byram's in, Andrew Cogliano is in, Valerie Nichushkin out, and they sent Oscar Lawson down, who was on their second line last game. So this is another one where we're not really going to know the lines. With Nichushkin out, I would imagine McKinnon and Rantanen are going to stay apart. It's generally what Bednar's done when like Lehkonen and Nichushkin, one of those guys, one or both of them are out, they generally have McKinnon and Rantanen separated. So who moves up to the second line? Could be Cogliano.
I mean, could it be Tatar?
It could be Tatar. Could be Miles Wood. So it could be one of those. This is a good power play spot. I think McCarr being back definitely helps that power play a lot. I remember there was a stretch last year where McCarr was out and their numbers took a pretty hefty dive. So McCarr being back definitely helps there. I don't know, like if the top line's McKinnon, Drouin, and Logan O'Connor coming in at 18.2%, like I don't want to do that. But if Ross Colton's still centering Mikko Rantanen and whomever, and Ross Colton's power play 1, I don't mind going like Colton, Rantanen, McKinnon, something like that, and getting a 3-man power play stack. It's just like, this is another one of those question marks, and this is an expensive question mark. You know what I mean? So like, it is going to be pretty hard to swap if you load in like McKinnon, Rantanen, McCarr, and something happens or whatever, and there's not much to swap to. But I don't know. Unless we get concrete lines before the game, I think I'm just taking one-offs or 2-mans and concentrating on the power play.
This isn't a spot where I'm necessarily running out to like really figure out exactly what Colorado's going to do here tonight. Like, it's nice that they're going to have McCarr and Byron back. Like, that's great. They're now down to Nichushkin, Lehkonen, and Landeskog. Those are 3 of their 4 top 6 wingers. And this was a team that had bad depth to begin with. Like, at a certain point, like, this team has a 3.2 total. It's the same as Ottawa that's coming in with no ownership. It's the same. It's lower than Nashville 1, which is coming in with positive leverage. And, it's the same as Chicago that is only coming in with 6% ownership. It's lower than Vancouver, a team we'll get to in a second. Like, I don't think this is a spot where you have to run out and try to get, a somewhat cheap combination. Like, there are a lot of really good players missing from this lineup. I think this is a case where I'd be fine one-offing Nathan McKinnon. Like, his projection today is, light years ahead of anybody else on the slate, especially at the center position. 22.2 points projected on DraftKings. Pasternak is the only player over 20. He's at 20.2. And then, Hughes is at 18.1. Like, clearly McKinnon is head and shoulders above everybody else, but that doesn't mean everybody else is going to go along with him, right? Like, he is the focal point. It's not necessarily that the rising tide would lift all boats. It's not really a great matchup against Winnipeg. Like, Winnipeg has been fine to good defensively for the most part this year. You know, the power play or the penalty kill, has been an issue at times, but once you I like Ross Colton, but once you have so many injuries that Ross Colton and Jonathan Drouin are on your top power play unit, like at a certain point, it just starts hurting you rather than helping those players. You know what I mean? So I'm fine with a one-off McKinnon, one-off Ross Colton. I think is fine if you want to save some money. We'll get to the defenseman. Certainly don't mind the defenseman. I just don't think I want to stack anything from Colorado. Like, I honestly think I'd rather stack from Winnipeg in this game. They got the 2 goals in the last game, nothing else, which was kind of a shame. Winnipeg's top line is up to 3.3 expected goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Mark Scheifele played nearly 23 minutes in that last game. Ehlers' shot rate has started to climb again after a dip the few weeks before. Not coming in with any ownership, 8.2% ownership, 8.2% top 2 stack, 2.0% ownership per the top stacks tools. I like Winnipeg 1 here. It's one of those things, like if I get burned, not running out to play like 18% Jonathan Drouin on a 13-game slate, like, I'm gonna live with that. I think I would rather get burned playing a 2% Winnipeg here tonight. So I'm on the Winnipeg side.
Yeah. I mean, interesting one for the flow chart, because normally this is a hard matchup, but with so many guys out, is it really? So, not bad. 2.8 road total, nothing to sneeze at either for Winnipeg. They're usually around like 3.1, 3.2 at home. So
I should say it's not like Winnipeg's one of my favorite stacks on the slate. They're my favorite stack in that game, and I don't mind them for one of those 20K ish expensive stacks. It's, I'd rather play Boston 1. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah, me too. Minnesota Wild with a 3.2 total heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 3.3. Andrei Kuzmenko got moved down to the 4th line. He is going to remain power play 1. Moving up onto the 2nd line is going to be Nils Hoglander. Between, who was it? Philip DeGiuseppe, Beauvillier, and Hoglander. I have the highest hopes for Hoglander. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but I happen to like Hoglander here. Obviously, he's not going to be on the top power play, but that's fine. No one playing Vancouver again. Like, everyone plays the Kraken. No one plays Vancouver. It's driving me nuts. JT Miller, Brock Besser, Nils Hoglander would be the guys I would go to here. On the Minnesota side, it's a bit more interesting because Kaprizov has shown signs of life. Vancouver's penalty kill can be taken advantage of. I like Minnesota 1 here. Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Marco Rossi. They have positive leverage. You want to go Joe Eriksson Ek, Matthew Boldy. Matthew Boldy has also shown signs of life recently. I don't mind that, but I'm going to go to the guys that I know are going to play the minutes, and that's Rossi, Zuccarello, Kaprizov.
Yeah, I will say I don't mind that. Like, I like seeing Hoglander on the 2nd line with Miller and Besser. I think I agree with you. He probably could make a big difference on that line, especially over Phil DiGiuseppe. And I think he's a better player than Kuzmenko, flat out. We'll see how things go. This is just a pretty tough matchup. Like, even before John Hines got hired and Dean Evason got fired, like, Minnesota had been playing pretty well defensively. I was looking at their numbers over the previous 4 weeks. 2nd best expected goals against in the league at 5-on-5, going back to Halloween. So, we're looking at almost 6 weeks now. 2nd lowest expected goals against in the league at 5-on-5, 5th lowest actual goals against. The big problem for Minnesota had been their penalty kill, and only 4 games, so we'll see how it goes. But in 4 games under Dean Evason, like, they're allowing something like 20% fewer shots against on the penalty kill. Now, it's been 4 games, pretty easy stretch of games as well. So we'll see how things go against Vancouver. But if anything from the Vancouver side, in that case, I would want Miller, Besser, and Hoglander. I would stack that line because you get 2 out of 3 guys on the top power play unit. And if Minnesota's penalty kill hasn't improved, you want 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. But I'm with you. I like the Minnesota side better here. In, pretty small sample, 50 minutes since John Hines got hired. The top line for Minnesota, 2.7 expected goals for, 2.2 against. Like, they're actually driving the play, which is not something that was happening very often when Dean Evason was there. Vancouver's penalty kill, not good. As you mentioned, you get 2 out of 3 guys on the top power play unit. Positive leverage per the top stacks tool. Like, this is one of my more favorite, like 16 to 18K lines tonight here on DraftKings. I'm not worried about any matchups on the Vancouver side. Minnesota does have a 3.2 total here tonight. It's the same total of Colorado that we just talked about that everybody's running out to play for one reason or another. Minnesota won for me. I do like Minnesota too. Theoretically, I do worry about minutes. Like, they're playing like 13 to 15 minutes, and it's nice that Boldy has 3 goals in those games or whatever, 2 or 3 goals. But you're not going to sustain offense playing 13 to 15 minutes a night. I agree with you. I'd rather go with the guys playing the minutes. I like the Kaprizov line the best in this game.
Yeah, and it's not Thatcher Demko tonight either for Vancouver. It is Casey DeSmith. So He is already confirmed.
Yeah.
Let's get to the last game of the night. New Jersey Devils with a 3.5 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 3.1 total. Another Kraken slate, another negative leverage Kraken slate. The Bjork, Strand, Tolvin, and Gord line negatively leveraged. It's the highest owned projected line in this game. Another note, which is kind of annoying, Riker Evans got called up for Seattle. He's going to be running their top power play unit, and he is not in the DraftKings player pool. He is a good defensive prospect. That means, Vinny Dunn's going to move to the second. That means Justin Schultz off the power play unit, which can only help Seattle. Their power play units suck. Like, they're bad, and they're like across 3 different lines. It drives me nuts. Lodi unit, make some correlation. But anyway, Riker Evans not in the player pool. I like the New Jersey side here. They have a massive road total, and they're not getting a lot of ownership. Hughes to Foley, Holla, 20,500 to full stack, 3.2% projected ownership. Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, Andre Palat, 2.3% projected ownership. That second line is $5,200 cheaper than the Hughes line. I think, I don't know, like, it feels bad stacking Devils line without Hughes, but I do like that Hischier, Bratt, Palat line. Obviously, if you want to get Hughes in there, you do it. We'll have to see, like, Meyer, Mercer, Holtz is an interesting third line as well. Not a massive discount there. They're more expensive than most of the Seattle lines, so I don't know if you need to dip down there. So I think you can also, do a little power play stack for the Devils.
Yeah, we make fun of Seattle a lot. I think this might be a decent night to pick them.
Yeah,
like yeah, exactly. A 3.1 total is good. It's just behind Colorado, same as Calgary that we just talked about. Devils goaltending remains bad. Like, I don't know if anybody watched that game against Vancouver the other night, but like, Devils aren't going anywhere with that goaltending. Let's just put it that way. And there's not a lot of ownership on Seattle. The top line specifically, Beniers, Eberle, Cartier, coming in over leveraged. Like, Seattle's going to be over leveraged every time they play, but not a lot of ownership, only 2.5%. And they've been creating a lot together. They're up to nearly 65 minutes, 4.2 expected goals, 66 shot attempts per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. That's a lot of offense. They haven't been finishing. They're shooting under 5%, which is why they haven't scored a lot of goals yet. But, you don't stack Seattle for the power play anyway. So I'm not worried that, they have broken correlation. They're just generating a ton of 5-on-5. And any team generating a lot of shots against New Jersey Devils goaltending is always interesting to me, or any line specifically. So I like the Beniers, Eberle, Cartier line. I think they're a nice filler stack at, 2 to 3% against, bottom 3 goaltending in the league, and Seattle's at home. So yeah, I do like the Beniers line here. On the flip side, I agree with you on the Hischier, Bratt, Palat line. Like, they're playing pretty well. I think you could say offensively. One problem I have is you want to pick against Seattle's penalty kill here. One big weakness Seattle has, other than their own goaltending, is the penalty kill. At best, they're an average penalty kill. Most of the time, they're well below average. And if you're stacking on the power play, like, I think you got to get Jack Hughes in your lineup. That's just kind of the way that I look at it. Hughes to Foley and Holla is interesting to me. Holla and Hughes creating a good amount of expected goals. They're at 3.2 when they're on the ice together. Not really worried about any matchups from the Seattle side. And with Andre Burakovsky back, I don't think that line's going to be any good defensively. As good as the Seattle top line has been at creating offense, they've also been allowing a lot defensively. So I think there could be some good matchups here for Hughes, maybe at 5-on-5, and you definitely want him if you're stacking against a bad power play. I like the Hughes line here, but I'm going to be honest. I think I like the Beniers line as a filler stack the most in this game. But yeah, Hughes, Toffoli, Haula against this Seattle penalty kill. Oh, man.
I am good with that. Coming up after us at 4 p.m., NBA Live Before Lock with Josh Engelman and Matt Bellman. Early lock for NBA here tonight. At 4:30 p.m., Owner's Box Live with Greg Ehrenberg. 7:15 p.m. Eastern, NFL Showdown Live Before Lock with Eric Lindquist and Neil Orfield. So stick around for that. Once again, thank you to Better Fantasy for sponsoring the show. Again, if you want to take advantage of that offer, you can click the link in the description below. Let's talk about defensemen. Cale Makar back, 8,200. I think, anytime the Avalanche lineup is a bit compromised, I really like the defenseman. Makar is the most expensive defenseman at the board at 8,200, but I think he's going to be somewhat lowish owned, maybe. It's always hard to get a read on defenseman ownership, so I don't mind him there. Then you have Quinn Hughes and Yossi. I much prefer Yossi to Quinn Hughes. I think Quinn Hughes is fine. He can get there. He just doesn't block a ton of shots, and you really need that block equity if you're paying up there. Charlie McAvoy is interesting if you are playing. I think you can correlate with Boston 1 there. Who else are you liking in the mid-range and below?
Yeah, mid-range, Seth Jones clearly stands out, but he's going to be widely owned. I think his ownership projection was 18-20% on DraftKings and FanDuel, which is pretty insane for a 13-game slate. But yeah, Seth Jones just in a pretty good matchup at his price. Jake Sanderson's going to be running the top power play unit for Ottawa. Probably going to have to play more minutes as well with Thomas Chabot out. So I like Sanderson. Adam Larson at 4K at home against the Devils team that likes to shoot. Anytime he's in line for a lot of block shots, I like Larson. So he's up there for me. Also like Moritz Cedar. Like him and Ghost, I think both make a lot of sense. Kind of depending on what you're doing. For Detroit, if you're going to Detroit power play stack, I'd probably put in Goss to spare. If you're not stacking Detroit here tonight, I think just playing Moritz Cedar by himself is perfectly fine. Cheap defenseman, cheaper. If Rasmus Dahlin is out, Owen Power is probably going to be running the top power play unit. So Owen Power, 3,700, I think makes a lot of sense here tonight. I wrote up Alex Romanoff from the Islanders. He's been shooting, he's been blocking, and he's been getting more minutes because of those Islanders defense injuries. So I like Romanoff for cheap. Hampus Lindholm might have to pick up some of Derek Forbort's minutes. So he's a pivot away from an expensive Charlie McAvoy if you want. Also wrote up wrote down Brock Faber in that matchup against Vancouver. He's looked good under Hines, and he's looked good pretty much all season. I think he's one of the more underrated rookie defensemen around right now, so I don't mind him. Henry Jokiharju, if Dahlin is out, he's probably going to jump to the second power play unit and also play more minutes, so I don't mind him at 3K. Mason Lowry, I think he's starting here for Boston tonight. He's 2,500, not starting in net, but starting in defense for forward, and he's 2,500 if you need him in price. Andrew Peak, once again, from Columbus. If you need a cheap defenseman, the Islanders are one of the shot happiest teams in the league. Any reasonable amount of minutes, we'll see Peak probably push for the block bonus, so I don't mind him for cheap as well.
Is Nick Blankenberg back? He's not in the DK player pool, but he might play tonight.
Yeah, he might be.
And he's not in the player pool. He's been on the team for 3 years, so good job.
They do have 3 defensemen injured, so there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of guys in and out on that blue line.
Yeah, let's talk about goalies here. Lots of goalies on the slate. There are a couple that stick out to me, and they're all cheap. Go figure. Carter Hart, 7,500. Dustin Wolf, 7,300. And Charlie Lindgren at 7,100 all stick out to me. I think you can play Devin Levi at 6,800 tonight. I think you play Mackenzie Blackwood at 6,900. The expensive options, surprise, surprise, don't really interest me. Husso at 8,500, you really need a shutout there. Linus Ullmark, I think, is fine for cash games. That is a very winnable game for Boston. Talbot, I think, is a winnable game there. You can play him in cash as well. Semyon Varlamov at 8,200, I guess you could play as well. Kira Schmid doesn't really interest me at 8,100. Again, volume is king, and usually the cheap road dogs get the volume, and that's why they're cheaper.
Yeah, I wrote up Dustin Wolf, like him, tonight at home against Carolina. Sam Montembeault at home against Montreal. He's only 7,100. It's not just this season he's been good. He was good last year too, behind a worse Montreal team, if that's even imaginable at this point. So I don't mind Montembeault. Semyon Varlamov at home to the Islanders, as long as I think he gets a start, is one of the expensive goalies that I like here. The other expensive goalie would be Joseph Woll from Toronto. Toronto has been giving up a lot of shots. He might have to face a lot. He might also just allow a lot of goals, though. So a little dangerous there. Also, don't mind Connor Ingram. He's just, kind of been on a heater. Philly can't score on the power play. So if Philly doesn't get there at 5-on-5, Ingram could have another good night. So I don't mind him at 7,900 if you want to pay up.
Yeah, Ingram has won 5 straight starts, and his lowest win there was 15.1 DK points, but the rest of them have been over 25 points. So, if they win, he's going to put up some pretty good numbers there. Who are you looking for your hat trick pick?
Well, I don't think this is going to be chalk. He's a little bit more expensive. Actually shooting against a goalie I just recommended. I'm going with Travis Konechny.
My man. I had that written down, but I had a feeling that you were going Konechny. So I am going to go to our boy that you convinced me to bet for the Calder, Marco Rossi.
Ooh, that'd be spicy. I hope he does. Start putting some pressure on Bedard.
For real. I also do like Bedard tonight, though. So
yeah, me too.
We will be back on Saturday. That's going to be a show and a half. Make sure to smash that like button on the way out. There's 155 of you in here right now. Thank you very much for watching. Smash that like button. Hit the subscribe. If you want to get in that Discord, sign up for the premium link down below. Good luck, everybody, and we'll see you on Saturday.
Good luck, Tony.